I have too much respect for human nature generally to believe it as selfish and as mercenary as that. I have learned one lesson, however. I will never leave my property to my friends, hoping by so doing to be held in loving remembrance. It would be the surest way to make them forget me." "Has your experience of the last few days made you so cynical as that?" the attorney inquired, again smiling into the bright, fair face beside him. "It is not cynicism, Mr. Whitney. It is the plain truth. I have always known that the Mainwarings as a family were mercenary, but I confess I had no idea until within the last few days that they were capable of such beastly ingratitude." "Do you mean to say that it is a trait of the entire Mainwaring family, or only of this branch in particular?" he inquired, somewhat amused. "All the Mainwarings are noted for their worship of the Golden God," she replied, with a low musical laugh. "But Ralph Mainwaring's love of money is almost a monomania. He has planned and schemed to get that old piece of English property into his hands for years and years, in fact, ever since it was willed to Hugh Mainwaring, at the time his brother was disinherited, and the name he gave to his son was the first stone laid to pave the way to this coveted fortune." "I see. Pardon me, Miss Carleton, but you just now alluded to Hugh Mainwaring's brother. I remember some mention was made at the inquest of a brother, but I supposed it must be an error. Had he really a brother?" "Ah, yes, an elder brother, and he must have been less avaricious than the rest of them, as he sacrificed a fortune for love. It was quite a little romance, you know. He and his brother Hugh were both in love with the same lady. The father did not approve, and gave his sons their choice between love without a fortune or a fortune without love. Hugh Mainwaring chose the latter, but Harold the elder was true to his lady, and was consequently disinherited." "Poor Hugh Mainwaring!" commented the attorney. "He made his choice for life of a fortune without love, and a sad life it was, too." Miss Carleton glanced up with quick sympathy. "Yes, it seemed to me his life must have been rather lonely and sad." There was a pause, and she added, "And did he never speak to you, his intimate friend, of his brother?" "Never." "Strange! Perhaps he was like the others, after all, and thought of nothing but money." "No, I cannot believe that of Hugh Mainwaring," the attorney replied loyally, then added, "What became of the brother, Miss Carleton?" "He was lost at sea. He had started for Africa to make a fortune for himself, but the boat was wrecked in a storm, and every one on board was lost." "And his family, what of them?" queried the attorney. "He had no children, and no one ever knew what became of his wife. The Mainwarings are a very prosaic family. That is the only bit of romance in their history, but I always enjoyed that, except that it ended so sadly, and I always admired Harold Mainwaring. I would like to meet such a man as he." "Why, I should say there was a romance in progress at present in the Mainwaring family," said Mr. Whitney, smiling. "What, Hugh and Edith Thornton?" She laughed again, a wonderfully musical, rippling laugh, the attorney thought. "Oh, there is no more romance there than there is in that marble," and she pointed to a beautiful Cupid and Psyche embracing each other in the centre of a mass of brilliant geraniums and coleus. "They have been engaged ever since their days of long dresses and high chairs, another of Ralph Mainwaring's schemes. You know Edith is Hugh's cousin, an only child, and her father is immensely rich. Oh, no, if I ever have a romance of my own, it must spring right up spontaneously and grow in spite of all opposition, not one of the sort that has been fostered in a hothouse until its life is nearly stifled out of it." Mr. Whitney glanced in admiration at the fair English face beside him, glowing with physical and intellectual beauty. Then, a moment later, as they passed down the long hall in response to the summons to dinner, and he caught a glimpse in one of the mirrors of a tolerably good-looking, professional gentleman of nearly 40, he wondered why he suddenly felt so much older than ever before. Miss Carleton was seated beside him at dinner, while nearly opposite was Harry Scott, conversing with young Mainwaring. He was quietly but elegantly dressed, and his fine physique and noble bearing, as well as the striking beauty of his dark face, seemed more marked than usual. Mr. Whitney watched the young secretary narrowly. Something in the play of his features seemed half familiar, and yet gave him a strange sense of pain, but why, he could not determine. "Mr. Whitney," said Miss Carleton in a low tone, "did you ever observe a resemblance at times between Mr. Scott and your friend Mr. Hugh Mainwaring?" The attorney looked up in surprise. "Why, no, Miss Carleton. I would not think a resemblance possible. Mr. Scott is much darker, and his features are altogether different." "Oh, I do not refer to any resemblance of feature or complexion, but his manner, and sometimes his expression, strikes me as very similar. I suppose because he was associated with him so much, you know." Mr. Whitney's eyes again wandered to the face of the secretary. He started involuntarily. "By George!" he ejaculated mentally. "Hugh Mainwaring, as sure as I live! Not a feature like him, but the same expression. What does it mean? Can it be simply from association?" In a state of great bewilderment, he endeavored still to entertain Miss Carleton, though it is to be feared she found him rather absent-minded. He was passing out of the dining room in a brown study when some one touched his arm. He turned and saw Merrick. "When you are at liberty, come out to the grove," the latter said briefly, and was gone before the attorney could more than bow in reply. CHAPTER XIII.